once again to Shepherd's Corner. Welcome to all our viewers and listeners in Barbados, St. Vincent, St. Lucia, the islands. Welcome to those who see us on the World Wide Web. And of course, welcome to our viewers here on Trinity Network. Welcome to Father Matthew Darrow, our Vocations Director here in Trinidad and Tobago, who has some very important and interesting news for us. We begin, as we always do, by a reflection on the gospel which we have for Sunday. The gospel passage, for those who have their missals, is the 15th Sunday in Ordinary Time of the cycle A. And for those who have their Bibles with them, it's the gospel of Matthew, chapter 13, verses 1 to 23. And it is a gospel passage which we all know. It is the parable of the sower. And it says this: On that day, Jesus went out of the house and sat down by the sea. Such large crowds gathered around him that he got into a boat and sat down, and the whole crowd stood along the shore. And he spoke to them at length in parables, saying, A sower went out to sow. And as he sowed, some seed fell on the path, and birds came and ate it up. Some fell on rocky ground, where it had little soil. It sprang up at once, because the soil was not deep. And when the sun rose, it was scorched, and it withered for lack of roots. Some seed fell among thorns, and the thorns grew up and choked it. But some seed fell on rich soil and produced fruit, 100 or 60 or 30-fold. Whoever has ears ought to hear. The disciples approached him and said, Why do you speak to them in parables? He said to them in reply, Because knowledge of the mysteries of the kingdom of heaven has been granted to you, but to them it has not been granted. To anyone who has, more will be given, and he will grow rich. From anyone who has not, even what he has will be taken away. This is why I speak to them in parables, because they look but do not see, and hear but do not listen or understand. Isaiah's prophecy is fulfilled in them, which says, You shall indeed hear, but not understand. You shall indeed look, but never see. Gross is the heart of this people. They will hardly hear with their ears. They have closed their eyes, lest they see with their eyes, and hear with their ears, and understand with their hearts, and be converted, and I heal them. But blessed are your eyes, because they see, and your ears, because they hear. Amen, I say to you, many prophets and righteous people longed to see what you see, but did not see it, and to hear what you hear, but did not hear it. Hear then the parable of the sower. The seed sown on the path is the one who hears the word of the kingdom without understanding it. And the evil one comes and steals away what was sown in his heart. The seed sown on rocky ground is the one who hears the word and receives it at once with joy. But he has no root and lasts only for a time. When some tribulation or persecution comes because of the word, he immediately falls away. The seed sown among thorns is the one who hears the word, but then worldly anxiety and the lure of riches choke the word, and it bears no fruit. But the seed sown on rich soil is the one who hears the word and understands it, who indeed bears fruit and yields 100 or 60 or 30-fold. That, my sisters and brothers, is the gospel, the good news of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
As I read this gospel parable, I remember a certain old priest in Trinidad and Tobago who on this Sunday read the gospel and then said, Jesus already explained it, and who am I to give a better explanation than the Lord? In the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, amen.
He was a practical guy.
Very practical. And he ended his sermon there. But yes, it is true, Jesus explained it. But we can still dig into it a little bit to discover for ourselves what this gospel means for us. Now, all of us who grew up in the country, unlike my young priest here, who is a city boy, a Belmont boy,
Yes.
with no land to plant, all of us know that the sower was not a good agriculturalist. Anyone who knows anything about agriculture knows that the way the sower went about sowing is not the way to do it. What the sower did was waste time and energy. Perhaps, however, Jesus was teaching his disciples that at times it is important to waste time and energy, even if the results do not seem commensurate with the time and energy spent. In Western society, of which we form a part, time and energy is quantified. Time means money. Time is to produce. Jesus, however, is teaching us something which turns our value system on its head. The parable tells us that the seed falls on 5 different types of soil. Only one type of soil can receive the seed well. Fully 80% of the seed is lost. Only 20% can produce fruit. And even then, the yield is not uniform. The sower doesn't get 100% from all the seed. Some produce 100, some 60, some 30. After telling the parable, Jesus repeats these words, which underline the importance of what he's saying. Listen, anyone who has ears. The culture in which we live makes us think immediately that 80% of the seed is lost foolishly. The sower should have found the good soil first and then sown the seed on the good soil. Jesus teaches us something very different about the ways in which we transmit his message to others. And you see, very often we preach to the good soil, to the converted. And it is a characteristic of our apostolate, our ministry, that we don't go into the difficult areas to sow the seed. In places which we think will not produce seed or will not produce fruit, we tend not to go. So until recently, we had no Catholic church in Betham Estate. We have no Catholic church in Sealots. We have no Catholic church in Bacadé. We go to the nice, safe areas, to the 20% who could produce fruit. And the parable is saying to us, no, the seed has to be sown even in those areas in which the seed will only grow with difficulty. St. Paul, the great apostle of his time, says that we must preach the message in season and out of season. For him, as for Jesus, the important thing was not how many would reject the message, but the fact that some people would hear it, perhaps only a handful, but they would produce fruit. Some 100, some 60, some 30. For those of us who work for the spread of the gospel, these are particularly difficult times. For people who see the value systems out of which we operate leading us to disaster, these are difficult times. For others, trying to get programs off the ground without funding, and no one, not even the government or the private sector, listens, be these sports programs or academic or vocational training programs or programs to help the poor, these are particularly trying times. Nobody wants to help. People don't seem to be listening and don't want to listen. Individuals set themselves up as arbiters of the truth. People no longer recognize objective truth. Parents often speak to their children and warn them about the dangers of peer pressure, etc. And then see their children going and doing the same thing that they had warned them about. Faced with these situations, the temptation is to give up or to say it doesn't make sense to continue trying to spin top in mud. The gospel, however, tells us something else. It tells us that the important thing is not the time wasted. It is not the words that have been wasted. The important thing is the 20% which found good soil in which to bear fruit, and the generosity and perseverance of the sower who continue sowing when only 20% of the soil is good. And this 20% is scattered among thorns and rocks and shallow soil. The important thing is to continue sowing. So the gospel today calls us to celebrate sowers whom we know. Those who continue sowing in spite of failure, in spite of rejection, in spite of the seeming waste of time. And all of us know people like that. Some of our parents are like that. Many teachers, especially in inner city schools, are like that. Institutions like Serval are like that. We know medical doctors who continue, in spite of the ridicule of their contemporaries and of their colleagues, to preach that abstinence is the only true cure for HIV/AIDS. We know activists who continue to oppose capital punishment. We thank God for them. It is because of these sowers that the 20% bears fruit. Some 100, some 60, some 30. And therefore, by their generosity and perseverance, they ensure that the values of the kingdom are kept alive in our world. And so the gospel questions each one of us. What type of sower are we? What type of sower are we? Do we continue sowing in spite of the apparent failure? Or do we shut up shop and say, it's a waste of time, no use going there, no use talking, no. And so God's word, which is like a two-edged sword, remains closed up within us because we follow the dictates of the culture in which we live. We quantify time, effort, and we say is not worth it. The gospel today says it is worth it. It is worth it. Oh, how I wish that all of us who say we proclaim the gospel how I wish that all of us had the zeal of St. Paul. Because if the 60 priests we have active, and the nuns, and the 100 nuns, and the lay people, the many lay people, if all of us had the zeal of St. Paul, preaching the word in season and out of season, the Caribbean wouldn't need anybody else. We would have it totally covered and converted. We today can listen to this program. We today can preach the gospel, can have Eucharist, because there were people who did not think it was a waste of time to give the gospel message to the sons of slaves and indentured laborers. If they had thought it was a waste of time, we wouldn't be here today. So let us thank Almighty God for them, and let us commit ourselves to following their example, so that the 20% who hear the word may produce fruit 100-fold, 60-fold, 30-fold. So may God's grace make us generous sowers who sow even in difficult times and in difficult circumstances. So let us pray a little bit. All-powerful and ever-loving God, it is your love which continues to bring your word to those places and circumstances which we consider unlikely to accept the gospel message and to produce fruit. Help us to be persevering in our efforts to bring your word to all peoples, especially those who find themselves in difficult and unlikely circumstances. Give to our transmission of your word the efficacy which is necessary so that those who hear it may produce fruit 100 or 60 or 30-fold. We ask this through the intercession of Mary, our mother, and through Jesus, your Son, and our brother, our Lord and Master. Amen.
Amen.
So that, my dear brothers and sisters, is the meditation which I prepared for this Sunday. We have a few things coming up. On Saturday morning at 10 o'clock in the cathedral, we'll ordain to the priesthood Deacon Simon Peter Ango. Simon Peter is a half Trinidadian. His mother is Trinidadian. His father is Nigerian. He grew up in Nigeria, but opted to come to work in the country of his mother's birth and where he was born before the family moved back to Nigeria. So Simon Peter will be ordained on Saturday at 10 o'clock in the cathedral. He will celebrate his first Mass in Mayaro, where he has worked as a deacon and where he was ordained as a deacon. Deacon Simon Peter, after his ordination, will continue to work in Mayaro, at least for the time being. But we have other exciting things coming up. And one of them is an AC, Antilles Episcopal Conference, Vocations Conference or seminar, in which we are expecting about 100
delegates.
About 100 delegates from all the islands of the English and Dutch-speaking Caribbean. And one of the chief people behind that is my brother here, Father Matthew Deroe, whom I had the privilege of being his rector in the seminary. So I've asked Father Matthew to be here with us this evening so that he can explain to you what this is about and answer some of your questions. So, Father Matthew.
Thank you, Your Grace. Thank you for inviting me on Shepherd's Corner to talk about the AEC Vocations Conference. I want to start off by saying you really fed the people tonight, viewers, listeners, with the Word of God. What was insightful for that Lectio is the sense that energy is being given to sow the seed, that the sower would not hold back, would continue to sow, continue to put energy into sowing that seed that is life. And the whole idea of the Vocations Conference is for us to put energy behind vocations promotions. And not only the energy of the so-called hierarchy of the church, but we're really hoping that the entire faithful, all the faithful, see the continuous sowing of the seed of vocations as part and parcel of church life in the Caribbean. So we're beginning on Friday, the 21st of July, and we end on Sunday. His Grace Archbishop Harris will be celebrating the opening Mass at 7 a.m. on the Friday. We have pre-registered delegates. It's not open at this moment to the public because we have registered specific people who we have invited throughout the AEC. We have asked teachers to register, school principals, catechists, people from youth, people from family life, so that they could take back the message. The theme is creating a culture of vocations in the AEC territories. And so we feel that that spectrum of people would be the ones working with the local ordinary, working with the vocations directors of congregations and dioceses to really animate a culture. We are excited about it. Archbishop Rivers is the chair of the Vocations Commission, and we are looking to encourage each diocese to take the fruits of the conference back to the diocese, whereby they would get various players involved, people from family life, the teachers, parents, catechists, school principals, educators, to really sow seeds. Our presenters for the weekend, we begin on Friday with Bishop Jason, the bishop in Barbados, and he is presenting on understanding the reality, a sense of urgency. An important conference, an important talk. People still think that somehow vocations will come, that Archbishop Harris will get on a plane and manufacture vocations are somehow. People are not seeing the sort of urgency. I tell people in the parish all the time, look at the back of my neck, you don't see made in China. Priests are not mass-produced. They come from families, from schools, the environment, the soil. So that we have to really create that soil, that environment. When the seed of vocation is sown, that seed is allowed to flourish and grow. So the urgency. So that's on the Saturday morning. We have also invited Sister Julie Marie Peters, because part of the conference is really looking at the data. What is the data telling us? And she's going to ask the conference delegates to respond to the data. Some of the questionnaires that we have sent out prior to the conference really sort of elicit some from people throughout the Caribbean about the vocations atmosphere in their parishes, in their homes. And so all of this data is being sent into the Secretariat, and we're going to work with this data. And she's going to look at that data and really provoke a response from the people. For example, we have asked questions to delegates. When last was there a priestly vocation in your parish, in your diocese? A profession to religious life? Conversations held in your primary schools? Your secondary schools? How often are these conversations? So this data will allow us to see the state of vocations promotion throughout the AEC. Bishop Jason is going to look at that urgency. Sister Julie is going to respond to that. And then we have also invited Donald Chambers from the Archdiocese of Kingston. And he's going to look at vocations and mission. Your Grace, you have any questions thus far?
No, that's it.
All right. So we are also going to ask the ministry groups, be it family life, catechesis, youth, to contribute to the dialogue on how can we animate an entire diocese. Currently, right now, there's a lot of diffused responsibility in many a diocese. That they say that the work of vocations is the work of the bishop and the vocations director. We want to widen the conversation, because we feel that the work of vocations begins in families, it continues in schools, it continues in confirmation classes, First Communion classes, even the RCIA program, adult faith education, so that there will be a chorus of voices sowing seeds. Part of the weekend also would be to invite youth panelists, a husband and a wife team, Tricia Sims and Raymond Sims, and they will be working with youth on the weekend to field questions from the public. So it's really a broad spectrum of the faithful who would really sit down and look at the data and see what are creative ways of responding to the data. We think it's a hopeful conference because we want to take it forward from the point of view to continue to sow the seeds as the gospel suggested earlier on.
You talk about vocations. Now, vocations are many in the church. You have the vocation, broadly speaking, to married life. You have the vocation to single life. And you have the vocation to priesthood, to religious life, to monastic life. How are these vocations related?
You know, His Grace, he was my teacher in the seminary, and he always comes with hard questions. Well, we're looking at the broad context of discipleship. If parents are disciples of Jesus Christ, if single people are disciples of Jesus Christ, the gospel would be important to them. The preaching, the spread of the gospel, the work of the church, the sacramental life of the church. And so parents, I would say, teachers, as single people, I would say, they have a vocation in itself to foster discipleship among their children, and their charges, such that if God is calling them, they would not smother that call. They would help to amplify that call in their lives.
So that in truth and in fact, the vocation of parents is a call to foster obedience to God's call.
Amen. Yes, correct.
Whatever that may be.
Yeah.
How do parents help their children to discover what God is calling them to?
I would say by a fundamental openness, an openness. Many parents today, because of the materialist culture, because of this so-called upward mobility, parents sometimes sideline vocations and don't allow their children, or don't channel their children enough into even thinking. I'll tell you, recently I spoke to a young man about, I said, have you ever thought about a vocation? He said, yes, Father, for 10 seconds. For 10 seconds. And really parents would plod children to do medicine, or to become a pilot, or to become an engineer, and
lawyer,
and all of these professions, noble in itself, they contribute to society. However, not many parents sit and plod their children to even consider a vocation to the priesthood and religious life, which is fundamental to the work and the mission of the church. So, in terms of the teachers play an important role. If there are teachers listening to us, an anti-religious or anti-religion or anti-spiritual stance in the classroom would hardly foster vocations. So we're hoping that the teachers in the conference and teachers who will hear of the conference would be broader in their approach. I dream of the day when Catholic teachers could really imagine children in their classrooms becoming priests and religious, and foster it, promote it actively.
When I do confirmations, I normally challenge young people to think of priesthood and religious life. And I say to them very often, what a wonderful thing it would be for you if you in this class of 2017, 50 years from now, they can say, this Archbishop was in my confirmation class in 2017. What a wonderful thing it would be. Is it that because of the scandals that we have heard so much of, that has sort of lessened the appeal of the priesthood or religious life?
I would say it is not only that. If we are honest, as a universal church, that may have been a factor contributing to decline in vocations. However, I understand that 10 years, or rather 17 years on from the scandals in the United States, that seminaries are full. Sometimes we scapegoat those issues simply because we want a way out of the call and the sacrifice that a call to the priesthood may entail. That does not let priests and religious off the hook, that we are called to witness to the love of God, to witness to morality and decency in public life, etc., etc. But we can't underestimate materialism the layer of the materialism and the upward mobility that people look for as also a factor. Then we also have the factors of you used to tell us in the seminary, Your Grace, that we live in a culture of impermanency. People are always in flux. So when you think of committing your life for 40 years or for 50 years, that's kind of jarring. People move today in society, people move from one job to another in terms of commitment to a particular job. There's a lot of change, a lot of jumping from one area to the other. So really, a vocation today is going against a culture, be it materialism, be it upward mobility, be it a sense of success, quick success.
This is very interesting. I have some more questions for Father Matthew, but we'll open the lines now. The number to call 627-5268. 627-5268.
While we wait for the call, one of the things I like to say to people is we have a high divorce rate, but people are still getting married, which is important. So you may have issues in terms of priests, negative issues or religious, but people must still take the plunge and the call.
Father Matthew, young people are normally very idealistic. Is it that priesthood, religious life no longer challenges our young people? Before you answer that, okay, there's a call. Yes, welcome.
Yes, a pleasant good evening to you, Your Grace, and to Father Matthew. A very interesting program, especially at this time when we just had the results of the SEA. And I am just going to repeat a story that was given to us, and I think it is appropriate at this time. A priest shared with us recently that the first choice was his parents' choice to go to Holy Cross College in Arima. And at that time, it was run by the Dominican Fathers. Today, this priest is now a Dominican priest. Although the choice of school was not his choice, was his parents' choice, today we have to say thank God for what his parents would have done in bringing him to this place of being a priest today as a Dominican. I am saying, if we as parents, grandparents, continue to prevent our sons and daughters from joining the religious order, we ourselves are going to be one day less a priest, and that priest who represents the Eucharist, because without priests we have no Eucharist. And today I want to thank you, Your Grace, and Father Matthew for bringing to our attention that need for us to pray for vocations. The Dominicans do it. The Puritans have to start doing it in the colleges. And we as parents have to pray. When we pray, to ask God to bring forth from our homes a religious that will represent us in days to come. Thank you, Your Grace, for allowing me to share.
Thank you. It's for both Father Matthew and myself are the products of Holy Ghost schools.
Correct.
I hope that we get more vocations from them. But Father Matthew, answer my question, please. I asked you about whether priests live too easy lives, so that priesthood is not really a challenge any longer.
Yeah, for some, in terms of the idealism of youth, I joined the seminary at 20, and I think what drew me into seminary was the example of His Grace the late Archbishop Anthony Pantin in terms of his prison ministry. I had an ideal that I wanted to, in this archdiocese, to have a Catholic prison. There was a Catholic school, we should have a Catholic prison there, Catholic parishes. And so that ideal is there. I felt that your Lectio Divina was important with respect to the sowing of the seed in the difficult areas. The difficult areas of the land, the areas where we may want to say that it's hard. So that is important, that we present the ideal and that young people see priests making a difference, so that they could be drawn as well. I think we need more prophetic ministries.
Yes, we
in the archdiocese where that ideal could be harnessed, the energy to live ideals.
We have another call. Yes, welcome.
Yes, good evening, Your Grace and Father Matthew.
Good evening.
Vocations is very close to my heart. And one of the things I always say, we look at the families that have produced priests. And you look at Father Neil Rodriguez, his entire family, the 2 nuns, 1 priest. You look at, even His Grace always mentioned, his sister and himself. You look at Archbishop Panton. You look at Father Gregory. 3 of them are priests, Augustine. What was the basic thing? The Holy Rosary. So this is nurtured in the home. When I was teaching confirmation, one of the children I had, her father wanted to be a priest. And the grandmother said, no, son, I want grandchildren. So it's not, some people do not nurture vocations. So that's one thing. Second thing is prayer. Like the person mentioned just now about the Spiritans and so. I once read a booklet, and I gave one to Father Matthew, about Infant Jesus of Prague. And in it, it was stated that in every religious house in the early centuries, there was, and the novena was prayed every month, not just in December, every month for vocations. I gave it to quite a few priests because, my heart is burning for vocations. So my prayers with you, and thank you for the program. Very, very interesting. God continue to bless you both. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, coming back to your question, Your Grace, we have to somehow tap into the religious imagination of our young people, because they have talents, they have dreams, they have visions. How can we integrate that into the idea of a celibate priesthood?
One of the, coming back to what you said at the beginning, Maloney is considered one of the dangerous hotspots. But the last 2 diocesan priests ordained in Port of Spain come from Maloney. And it was because of the ministry and the witness of Father Clyde Harvey, who is now Bishop-elect of Grenada. Sowing of the word in difficult circumstances and in unlikely places produces fruit.
Yeah.
Produces fruit. The so-called good families, where long ago the vocations came from, are not producing the vocations anymore. And I think it is because, and this may sound harsh, but we have changed the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the God of the living, for the God money and the God pleasure and the God whatever else, comfort. And we are not touching the idealism of our young people anymore.
One of the things that Generation S has been doing over the past 3 years, Generation Service, is our, as you're aware, Your Grace, is our Vocations Awareness Program. And every Lent we have what we call the 24-hour fast. And next week, Saturday, at the conference, we are presenting to Zion community a check for $50,000. And this has come out from the fasting and the almsgiving for Lent from young people. Young people who have fasted for the 24 hours. We have so designed the fast that it brings the three pillars of Lent together: prayer, fasting, and almsgiving. So they fast for 24 hours and they get sponsors for each of the hours of the 24 fast. They pray, and that money is tabulated and given to various ministries in the Archdiocese. One of the things that we are trying to do at Generation S is to bring young people to sacrifice for something bigger than themselves.
What people don't know, or do, is that Father Matthew and Sister Lorraine Joseph of the Clooney's, were two young people who did 2 years of mission work in Matlot in the 90s.
Yes.
And out of that group of young people who went up to Matlot with Sister Rosario, who was a great example of self-giving, and two vocations came, one for the priesthood, one for the religious life, and most of the others are engaged in their parish communities, doing very good work. So that parents mustn't be afraid of letting their children live the ideals that they want to live.
And the alternatives, I mean, there are a lot of groups around the world, NGOs around the world, that are presenting the ideals of an alternative society. The civil society movements that you see protesting unbridled capitalism, the civil society movement that protests against the rape of the environment, are really made up of young people. How can we, as an archdiocese, tap into that imagination that the world could be different, the world should be different, Trinidad and Tobago should be different? So if there are young people listening to this program, to say that we can foster and we can form a different Trinidad and Tobago, but we need people who would put their energy. As His Grace shared tonight, the sower, he put energy into it. We have to put continuous energy into working for better Trinidad and Tobago. It's a brilliant and insightful Lectio Divina. So I out of that Lectio Divina, to continue the prayers for vocations, continue the sowing of the seeds, sowing of goodness in the classrooms, in the confirmation classes. We will reap a harvest one day.
I think it is important too that young people do not say, I am not good enough, or I have this disability, or I don't like talking about myself too much, but you know, before I stammered a lot, my hand shook a lot, all sorts of things. But I'm Archbishop about it now. God is generous with those who are generous with God.
Amen.
There's another call. Yes, welcome.
Yes, good evening to you both and blessings.
Good evening.
As His Grace said about priests, and in my words, encouraging. And he just brought me back to mind Father Leo in our parish here at St. Anthony's. That if you watch all youths, Father Leo was a priest and a shepherd that really encouraged that everything we go to Father with to deal with church and billing, he'll still go for it. That all the training we have, I think Father will send us and he'll pray for it, like with the Alpha program, all the different things. Father Leo, that is why when you come to St. Anthony's, you'll see how much young people as altar servers and St. Vincent de Paul and different things. Because of priests like Father Leo, And if we get some more priests who encourages people and not set up their face when young people come to them, we will get more vocations. Thank you and have a good night.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the little tap behind the head. All of us need to be more welcoming. That is why we wrote the pastoral letter on hospitality. That we have to be people who welcome others. I try to tell our priests all the time, that if our young people don't see happy, satisfied priests, they will not want to join a group of grumpy old men.
Correct.
They need to see us happy, satisfied, doing things for Almighty God that we can do, and doing it happily and sharing. If we do that, then we're not in too much danger. Or we will get over the slump in vocations and come back to what we were a few years ago. Father Matthew, we are people of hope. We have to be people of hope.
Yeah.
How do you give our young people that hope so that even though they see themselves as sinners, as not perfect, as bad habits, perhaps physically challenged, how do you give them that hope?
By telling them God loves us into being. I really believe that if God calls, as the saying goes, God calls the unqualified, and he qualifies the called. And if we believe that he is the Lord of the harvest, he is going to equip, he is going to be with us. Hope is not, as I told my parishioners at Mass earlier on this evening, hope is not that things will get better, Hope is, theological hope is that God is with us. I want to say that God is with you. If God is calling you, no matter the situation, no matter how inadequate a young person may feel, that God will qualify, God will equip, God will give the grace, God will hold your hand. And I have felt that God has held my hand throughout my years from age 20 to age 44 now. And I am a happy priest. I am fulfilled. I wake up every morning what to do for God, his church, and his people.
Thank you, Father Matthew. We only have 20 seconds left. Tomorrow I'll be 49 years a priest.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And God has held my hand over those 49 years of priesthood and the years of formation before that also. Thank you for being with us tonight, Matthew. God bless you.
Thank you.